the most important thing is keep the important things important. Family, don't sacrifice your family for your career.
Right.
Um, put your family first. And I'm saying these things because I've made these mistakes and have had to recover from them.
Sure.
But I think that's important. Don't take yourself so seriously. Enjoy what you do, have some fun. Don't make it a grind. Enjoy the people you're working with. If you don't, then go do something else. Spend too much time. I always tell people you spend too much time at work to not like what you're doing and not
Right.
like the people you're doing with.
Hello, and welcome to the Elevator Careers Podcast, sponsored by the Allred Group. I am your host, Matt Allred. In this podcast, we talk to the people whose lives and careers are dedicated to the vertical transportation industry to inform and share lessons learned, building upon the foundation of those who have gone before to inspire the next generation of elevator careers. Today, our guest is Jay Arntzen, President and CEO of Genesis Elevator, President of Revelation Manufacturing, and also co-founder of Saving Susan Ministry. Jay started with Montgomery Elevator in 1984, right out of college. He spent 24 years with the company, and in 2008, Jay started Genesis Elevator, and in 2018, he started Revelation Manufacturing. Jay experienced a big change of heart in 2014 and chose to start a ministry called Saving Susan, as he realized his purpose was so much bigger. Jay, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's good to be here. Matthew, appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. It's been a little while since we talked, and I'm excited to get to know you a little bit better, talk about your career, and just want to start at the beginning. How did you get started in the elevator industry in the first place?
Well, I needed a job.
It's
I
a good
was
start.
graduating from college, and it was during a recession. So there weren't a whole lot of opportunities, but there was this company in Moline, Illinois called Montgomery Elevator, and I was fortunate enough to get on board with them.
So where were you going to school when you were graduating?
Northern Iowa.
Okay. And is that where you were from then? Just right in that area?
From that area. I was from Iowa originally, Cedar Rapids.
Okay.
But yeah, it was cold. It was
Indeed.
really cold.
Indeed. So you started with Montgomery at the time, and what was your first job? What did they have you doing?
Well, they have this, and I think they still have. Coney's kind of continued to do it, but they had kind of a unique training program in which, when you got hired on, you stayed in headquarters for about a year.
Okay.
And spent time in all the different areas. Operations, sales, manufacturing, human resources, legal. And then you also processed orders that were coming in from the field.
Oh, wow.
So there was they usually had about eight people. Every semester would come in and they kind of rotate them out. But so you made these, really good friends. You're all kind of in the same boat right out of college and stuff. And interesting part is years down the road, when my stints back in headquarters, I had that training thing as part of what I was responsible for.
Oh,
And it
wow.
was really
Okay.
kind of fun, you know, being part of that again.
That's cool. So eight people at a time, and they would just kind of train you up, like you say, for a year, and then send you off into different departments or parts of the country?
Well, you go. Most everybody went out to the branch offices.
Mm-hmm.
It was mainly just salespeople that they brought in to do that, and so I spent my year, and they sent me to Dallas, Texas.
Okay.
So, which was a big deal because I really hadn't been too much farther than any of the states that surrounded Iowa. So
Sure.
it was a big move for me.
So what kind of clicked with you about the elevator industry? I mean, or did you feel like, maybe I'll go do something else? I mean, how did you come to stay?
That's a good question. And I really think it wasn't so much elevators as it was Montgomery Elevator.
Okay.
privately owned, 100-year-old business, third generation. And they really tried to make it a family. In fact, they sat you down, when you're interviewing, say, okay, this is what your next 10 years looks like.
Oh my.
If you perform, this is how your career more than likely will go. No promises, but it really struck me like, wow, I mean, I knew where I could be within a certain period of time, and nobody else was telling me that. They were, just saying, well, you gotta do your job well. So
Right.
that's really what attracted me there, was the family environment and the history that was associated with that organization. So
That's really cool. I didn't realize they were a 100-year-old company when you started. So
yeah, it might have been a couple years after. I know I still had hair, so it was probably I don't know, a couple years after that they turned 100. But yeah, it started out as basically a machine shop,
sure.
and they built components during the war for battleships, and really interesting history.
That is interesting. And so at the time though, primarily escalators, is that correct? Or were they doing elevators as well?
They're doing elevators. I mean, we did a
Mhm.
lot of low rise elevators, mid rise. Back then it was geared traction elevators.
Mhm.
When I started, we were just kind of getting into some higher rise stuff, which was exciting, especially being in Dallas, because they were really booming. But they really got into the higher rise stuff. Probably about, that was probably 94, 95 area. They came out with a new control system that was accepted by the consultants and stuff. And so they put in some pretty high rise stuff.
Cool.
So
So you were in a sales role. Is that correct? You were.
well, actually, that's the beauty of Montgomery, is I got to do a lot of different things. I mean, I
Okay.
started out in sales, then I was a branch manager, then I was a regional sales manager. Then I went back to headquarters and was running marketing and sales services, and then I went to New York, ran a company for
Okay.
Kone. That was after Kone bought us, and then back to Moline for another stint, and then to Atlanta. So we moved down around quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like it. Along the way, who were some of your mentors that taught you the ropes and kind of helped you see what was possible?
Well, my first stop was in Dallas, and there was a prolific branch manager there by the name of Jerry Costanzo, who was from Chicago, and he was something else. And then the first guy I worked for, my sales manager, was Scott Hutter, and Scott, yeah, kind of, we put cross paths in our careers a couple of times, but he ended up being one of the senior vice presidents in headquarters, and I reported to him up there. And then he left and went and ran a couple companies, but he serves on our board for Genesis Elevator now
Oh,
too.
wow. Okay.
So it's been great just kind of having that kind of relationship. So Scott was Jim Clausen, who was president one time. I kind of came up through that his lineage, so to speak, and Denny Lauterbach, and then a couple of Finns, Ilpo Matiyama, who ran the escalator division, and I was the product manager for
Okay.
escalator.
Mhm.
Great guy. And then Hamo Makinen was the president of North America for several years when they first bought Montgomery. Great guy. I learned a ton from him. Guy never forgot a number.
Wow.
So you better have your numbers right, because he would remember what you said last month.
That's a little intimidating for me because,
Yeah,
yeah, that's tough.
yeah.
So I'm curious. You mentioned kind of joining the Montgomery family, and then
Mhm.
obviously at some point, I don't know the year, but Kone came in and purchased it. How did you notice a shift? Did you notice? I mean, did Kone come in with kind of that same family feel, or what was that like for you?
Well, I think out of the majors, and Montgomery was a large company in the U.S., but they weren't international
Sure.
to any significant degree. So Kone has a similar history, 100-year-old business. The Herlin family started it. It is traded on the Finnish stock exchange, but vast majority of the stock still owned by the family.
Cool.
They're now in their fourth generation, fifth, I take that back, fifth generation family, really running the company. And it was different. The Finns are different than we are, obviously.
Sure.
So it was a little bit different. And Hamo came over right away and planted him here. And he he'd been with Coney for a long time and stockholder and stuff. And he pretty much said, we're going to run this the way you guys run it for a while. And then he goes, I'll let these guys come in, but I'm not going to let them come in as fast as they want to. And so it just made us feel at ease. It still felt like we were still part of this kind of family environment.
Yeah. How long did it run? Did he, I guess, let it run the way it had before he made changes?
Really the first year, there weren't a whole lot of changes. I mean, there were some marketing things that were done, and I was charged of marketing at the time. So I got involved in some of that, which was interesting because there was a lot more of a global influence in that. But in terms of structure and organization and at that time products, it was really just we just kept doing what we were doing, and I think it was a great way to go.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, a change like that's made, and it's like it's a revolving door,
Sure.
and that didn't happen. I
Yeah.
mean, he was a great leader. He had his lieutenants, and we just kept on rocking and rolling. But the key was for us is, and this was interesting about Montgomery, is Montgomery could never keep up with the other majors in terms of technology. I
Right.
mean, our job was we had to follow really fast.
Right.
So with Kone, that completely flipped.
Sure.
Kone is such a big technology company, or has been in the past. And it was just exciting to be part of, the introduction of the machine roomless elevator, and as part of a global escalator development. And it was just really cool to be part of it from that perspective.
Right. Right. Well, I remember going to, I think it was, I don't know, Universal Studios or something in Florida, and I saw Montgomery / Kone, on the moving walk. And how long did they share the name essentially?
It was about it. I mean, I was up at headquarters. That was when I was doing marketing, and they kept that for about 2 years.
Okay.
Until they finally dropped the Montgomery side. But that was a sad day for us guys who've been around
Sure.
long time. But
So how long were you with Montgomery before the acquisition?
12 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then after the acquisition, how long did you stay?
About 13 years. So
Okay.
I left right at 25 years.
Gotcha. And so you said you moved multiple times, landed in Atlanta, and then what changed for you in Atlanta?
Well, one of the things that changed, I mean, I had a great job, and there wasn't anything that was necessarily wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
But as major corporations do, they restructure quite often, and sometimes restructuring doesn't work out for people. And for me, I had three sons. They were in school, grade school, and in middle school, and I just knew that I'd be traveling a lot, overseas, and I just decided I needed to do something for my family. And so that's when I decided to leave Kone, and I really didn't want to go to work for any other major companies for the same reasons, you know.
Sure.
So after about a year's worth of conversations with my bride and and some mentors, you know, that weren't in the industry in that, we decided to start the company just before the Great Recession, by the way, which was
Gotcha.
wasn't ideal, but you know, we learned how to run lean and mean pretty early.
Yeah, you would have to. So you started Genesis Elevator in 2008. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yeah, you
yeah.
were right before the Great
We were
Recession
going to
for
make a
sure.
big push into the home elevator market, which was, you know, that was decimated
Ooh, yeah.
because of mortgage issues.
Yeah, no,
And
it's interesting because we moved to where we're at, I guess in '07, and there were a bunch of subdivisions all stubbed out and ready to go. And then, yeah, for about 10 years, they all just lay dormant
yeah,
until just a few years ago and started building again.
yeah, I remember early on, there's a couple of days there, I'm just begging the phone to ring, you know, and I'd run out to anything and you know, we decided to switch pretty quickly to get into the commercial side of things too, which was always part of the plan, just not that
So it
soon.
actually went in reverse because it sounds like you got your big footprint in commercial and then moved to residential, but the plan was to start in residential and move to commercial. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, at the time, up before 2007, the residential business was growing at a 25% clip year on
Wow.
year.
Wow.
Huge.
Yeah,
And you know, the indications with aging population and you know, land was getting scarce, so people are building up and they have to have access to
sure.
bedrooms and all that stuff. You know, everything appeared to show that this was going to be a great market. And I really thought it was at that time was underserved.
Sure.
There's a lot of kind of small companies, you know, doing it, but they really hadn't looked at taking more of an industrialized approach. In fact, I had pitched it to Kone
Sure.
to do something like that, and um, at the end of the day, they just had too many other things that were on their plate, and the majors just they didn't like what they perceived as the liability associated with the home elevator market,
Well, I'm
and
sure it is a different beast. I mean, you
it is.
work in both, and so
Mhm.
I can't imagine what it's got to be like to go into an existing home and do a retrofit installation, or it's got to be very, very, very different than on the commercial side, and the people you're dealing with, and ultimately the homeowners are going to care the most, right?
Right. Well, we you know, our guys, when we do service or anything on a home elevator, you know, we always say you're walking into their inner sanctum,
Mm-hmm.
so you got to treat it like that.
Yeah,
So booties and yes ma'am, yes sir, you know, professionalism. It's different than, you know, pulling service on a office building or school or, you know, hospital or something like that. It's just different.
sure.
So
It's a lot more personal, whereas the office building is professional. It's not as personal.
no, no. I mean, most of our guys, you know, and we're part of our process is that they need to spend about 10 minutes talking to the homeowner, not necessarily about elevators. Just connect with them and make sure, you know, that we've done our job and everything, but then just connect with them, because
Yeah,
then you become a trusted servant, you know, for
sure.
their home. And that's really important. And we want that anyway. You know, um, we want to share what's going on in our company with others, and homeowners are usually pretty interested. They got time, especially
Yeah.
people at elevators.
Yeah, well, and they're probably not going to walk away while you got your tools there and you're working on it, right? They're going to stay there and probably watch
Yeah,
you the whole
yeah,
time.
yeah. And so, you know, the guys who we put in that end of the business, we really make sure that they have these relational skills are important important as the technical skills.
Yeah.
One guy I get calls on all the time, from people saying how wonderful he is and all this other kind of stuff. And he's a decent mechanic, but he's just a great guy.
Really personable. Sure.
It makes all the difference in the world,
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. So I'm curious. So sounds like you got your start really in the commercial side, and then in the residential. How long before you actually started manufacturing? Because I believe the other half of your business or other part, Revelation, I think you call it, right, is the manufacturing a home elevator product, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Huh.
We started, we talked about it for many years. But, I know enough I was in manufacturing for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I knew enough about manufacturing to know I didn't know enough about manufacturing.
Understood.
But a friend of mine who was in manufacturing his entire career, Al Seba, he was retiring from John Deere, and he had a big job with them. And he said, what's kind of cool about you, Jay, is you don't have to go from 100 miles an hour to zero.
Sure.
Because that's what he was thinking about his retirement. I thought about it. I said, maybe you don't have to. And so I drug him into it. And so he went into it with me, and he really, for the most part, he kind of runs the program.
Okay.
In terms of leadership. He's more of a consultant basis for the guy that we have that's there, but he just brings a whole different mindset,
Sure.
to manufacturing. We got more 3-letter acronyms over there than anybody's business. And it's you can eat off the floor. It's so clean.
That's awesome. So do you brand the home elevators as Revelation, or are they still Genesis brand elevators, but the manufacturing portion is called Revelation?
Yeah. For Genesis, we sell Genesis product. It's Revelation, but it's kind of like a model name.
Okay.
But the reason, and they're actually two completely separate companies.
Okay.
Because one of the things that we really are interested in doing is getting into distribution. And not going out and installing the elevators or anything like that, but finding, quality home elevator companies that want a good product, or are concerned about the way it looks.
Sure.
We're very focused in on what the customer sees.
Mm-hmm.
And we've also developed a 1-day installation process for a home elevator.
Wow. Okay.
So that's a big deal. We're still refining that and working on it. But one of the things I learned at Kone, and the Finns are, if I heard process out of a Finnish employee once, I heard it 100,000 times.
Sure.
There's only one best process.
Wow.
There's only one. Now you got to figure out what that is, but you have to start by at least having a process.
And then you got to keep refining it.
Yeah. You got to keep just working it. And so we've been doing that. And we have a great guy running the manufacturing side who's got, a lot of manufacturing experience. And so they're really getting dialed into it. And the way we look at it is manufacturing doesn't stop until we turn the keys over to the customer. It's just that the manufacturing process moves to site,
into the home, essentially. Right.
And so we do as much of the manufacturing process under roof, where it can be controlled and you have better chances at good quality and low defects. And then what happens out in the field is it's all plug and play. It's easy, kind of an erector set kind of mentality.
Sure.
So we're pretty excited about it. We still got a lot of work to do, but it's coming along.
That's awesome. And I was gonna, you actually answered my question before I even asked it. Are you, do you sell it outside, or you only install? Are you the only installer of your product? But it sounds like that is part of the goal, is to, like you say, find other vendors, other installers to sell your product to. So they.
Yeah, we've started out. We're not in any big hurry. We want to do it right. And so we had 2 companies this year. We really just started distributing outside of Genesis this year. So we've had a couple of companies that have been buying some product from us, and it's gone really well. It's gone really well. So we'll keep expanding throughout the Southeast and then nationwide.
Sure.
Somebody probably will be. I won't be around.
There you go. Well, and let's, we can obviously talk a little bit about that. I wanted to find out, I know that you as a company, the Genesis Elevator in particular, is a huge, a large contributor to I guess it's a charity, a ministry called Saving Susan. Is that correct?
Yes.
Tell me how that all started.
Well, I believe in Jesus Christ. So I was in church and they started talking about some mission trips you're going to take. And I was 48 years old. I wasn't never going to go on a mission trip.
Too busy.
But yeah. God had other ideas. So anyway, I really felt called to go. So I didn't know why. And we were going to Cambodia. And I didn't know where Cambodia was. I just knew it was over there somewhere in Southeast Asia. I didn't know anything about the country or anything. And so, I went and I learned about the country, and it's an amazing place, but it's been just decimated over centuries.
I'm sure.
And the people, they say that people in Cambodia that are pure blood Cambodia, they don't understand the concept of love because they haven't been loved.
Wow.
And we found that to be true. We really did. But we went to this Christian orphanage that our church was sponsoring. And, I love kids. My wife and I thought about adopting one time. Didn't work out, but I just love kids. And so we spent time at that orphanage, fine. And we went, to this other orphanage in the middle of the country. And the first day we were there, this little girl who was 4 years old, and I just kind of connected. And we didn't even speak the stinking language, I'm showing pictures on the phone. We're taking pictures. Anyway, we get up to leave, and my heart was burdened for this little girl. And so I called my wife, and, the communication was broken. I go, and I didn't know much about adoption or anything else. I go, girl, adopt. That's all she heard.
Sure.
So she was freaking out, thinking I was going to
bring home some kids.
Anyway, one thing led to another, and found out she couldn't be adopted because the borders are closed because of human trafficking and corruption in a lot of the developing countries.
Wow.
So we started just I talked to the orphanage director, and we started having video calls just like you and I are having here. Mm-hmm. And one thing led to another. And so we founded a ministry called Saving Susan. Her name's actually Wichita, but I couldn't pronounce it. So I said, I'm just going to call her Susan. So that's how it kind of got. It wasn't some big marketing effort, but anyway, so we've been doing that since then. And it's been such a huge blessing, just not just to my wife and I and her family, but to people in the company too, because Saving Susan sits in the same office space that we're in.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They're just in a different area.
So it's kind of become a corporate mission, as it were. I mean, it sounds like the company overall, I think you said that there's a certain percentage of profits that go right into that foundation. And
yeah, we give 24% last year, and we're about on the same, probably 25 this year.
That's a big chunk
after bonuses and everything, so we take care of our people, but we give a big chunk of the money to that. And it was interesting because as we sat this past year and really talked about, okay, what are we here for? What are we really here for? And everybody knew, well, we got this Saving Susan, we got this working care thing. And, we have this other stuff and everything else. And it just dawned on me. I said, hey guys, here's the deal. That's our purpose. It's not just something we do because it's good to do that kind of stuff. That's why we exist. We exist for that. And so it became our purpose, and we changed our mission and everything. Our mission is to elevate orphan care. And
Wow.
so everything we do now is centered around how does this impact our purpose? And we bring our vendors into it, our customers, and it's not that we're looking for everybody to donate money. We're just saying, hey, there's meaning in this, and if you're interested, you can become part of it in a lot of different ways.
That's awesome. So you've got other partners. It's not just the company that's sponsoring, if you will.
The company pays for all the overhead costs.
Okay.
So all of the programs and everything that goes into the kids can go direct from, if you donate a dollar goes to the.
Okay.
So what's been interesting is it's growing so fast. We got to keep growing this company to keep up with it. But we've realized that, God's going to take care of it regardless. It doesn't depend just on us. We've got, there's an architectural firm across the street, and we take these kids all the way through college.
Wow.
So once they become into part of the program, they're in the program. And we always advocate them. We always stay in touch with them. We partner them up with other families like Tracy and I did with Wichita. And we're with them through they get through college and find a job. Our purpose at the ministry is to give them an opportunity to be people of influence and have an impact for God's kingdom.
Sure.
We have to get them out of poverty. We have to get them
Sure.
out of the path of human trafficking and all these things that happen to orphans, whether they're in the orphanage or not. Once most orphanages or children's homes, when you turn certain age, you're out on your own.
Yeah.
And they don't have the means to do anything. So what do? They end up going back to where they came from and just repeating the cycle.
Yeah.
So we found businesses that actually they fund the ministry because they're like industries. So this architectural firm is funding a kid in Guatemala to become an architect.
Wow.
We have a restaurant we have our first kid out of culinary school just graduated. He was funded by a restaurant. And we got teachers doing that. We've got an IT company that's supporting another kid. We have a doctor we've got 2 kids that are in their 5th year of medical school, and this doctor's paying for both of their medical education. So that's really, and again, it's cool, Matthew, how God works. We didn't know that was going to be the end game.
Sure.
And now we're seeing these kids. We had one girl that graduated in college. She was supported by some teachers. She went back to her orphanage that has a school there, and she's teaching. And now she wants to become a lawyer.
Wow.
And this is a girl who was afraid of her own shadow.
Sure.
She was a wallflower. She wasn't going to go out and do anything. And my wife went on her school visit with her in Cambodia, and it's just been cool. And my reason for telling you all this is I believe this is what business is supposed to do.
Yeah.
How many times have you run into, or I've run into, a business owner or an exec that are completely miserable because they've gotten everything they've ever wanted,
sure,
materially, and all the power and prestige that goes with it, and it didn't deliver what they thought it would.
Sure.
I absolutely convinced is because they didn't find their purpose. That's not their purpose.
Sure.
And you don't have to be Christian. You can still, there's a lot of great purposes out there, but you got to do something that is beyond you and what you do for a living.
Right. And that's what I hear you say. Do something greater than yourself, right? As you find something greater than yourself, that's where you can find a deeper joy, purpose, contribute in a bigger way than just maybe having all the toys and those aren't going to necessarily deliver the joy you're looking for.
They never will. They're great for a while. It's just like when you're a kid. You got a new toy, man. It's the best thing. And it lasted, what, a couple of days? It's no different when you get older. It's the same stinking thing. How many cars can you have, or boats, or trips, or whatever the case is?
Yeah.
They're not gonna give you the kind of joy that comes from truly being committed to doing something for somebody else without any strings attached.
Right.
That is pure joy. I can't imagine my life without it. But I tell you what, you go back 20 years, I wasn't that guy.
Yeah.
You know,
Sure.
I was all about old Jay. What's Jay gonna do?
Sure.
And I'm the fortunate one that God called me out of that and said, no, the only reason you're doing this elevator company is I got something else in mind for you. And that was the truth.
Yeah. That's awesome. So as you get ready to retire, how is this going to play out? I mean, it sounds like you're probably on the board. I think you said your wife is heavily involved. What is that going to look like for you? And are you concerned that maybe the foundation, the mission of the charity won't carry forward, or what does that look like?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, those are questions that we're really challenged with right now. There's an organization called Mission Increase that's really been great. They're helping us through this transition. And one of the things that they say, really, for your mission to really take wings, the founders need to be out of it.
Interesting. So you're saying that the mission can grow once you get out of the way? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, it's grown pretty fast. That's because of my wife is phenomenal with that. But the reality is that's not how most ministries go. And, you get older and how many teams of people can you take to these far off places?
Sure.
It gets to be a struggle.
Yeah.
Trust me. And, you gotta get in fresh blood. It's no different than transitioning out of this role here too. I'm sure there's better ways than what I learned. I just don't know what they are. So you got to bring people in that can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's amazing work you're doing. And I'm sure, yeah, you've got a plan in place, and it's just a matter of kind of executing it to make sure you've got people running the Genesis and Revelation side and the Saving Susan side. And so we're kind of running out of time, but as we wrap up, what some of the, I don't know, some of the greatest lessons you've learned, or some advice you would give to those in the industry, or just, anybody who's listening, or because you've had a remarkable career. I'm sure you've learned a lot.
Mm-hmm. I think the most important thing is keep the important things important. Family, don't sacrifice your family for your career.
Right.
Put your family first. And I'm saying these things because I've made these mistakes and have had to recover from them.
Sure.
But I think that's important. Don't take yourself so seriously. Enjoy what you do, have some fun. Don't make it a grind. Enjoy the people you're working with. If you don't, then go do something else. Spend too much time. I always tell people, you spend too much time at work to not like what you're doing and not like the people you're doing with.
True.
So the industry is interesting though, because people who get in rarely leave.
That's true.
There's I think it happens more nowadays. But it used to be, man, it was kind of like what is about you elevator guys? You never leave. But it's fascinating. It's interesting. It's always different. There's just it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, from having exposure to a lot of different industries, I've never found anything quite like the elevator industry, the camaraderie, the lifetime friendships, the way people can reach out and, ask somebody for help, even at totally different companies 20 years after they worked with each other.
Yeah.
can
Yeah,
be
it's
mind-blowing.
it's a tribe. There's no question. It is a tribe. I left it for a couple of years and went off and worked for another company, and I got bored. I mean, I'm going, geez, this is all there is. So I went back. I went back to Kone,
Right.
and finished out my corporate career with them because elevators were just, I don't know. There's just so many different things you can do, and um, it's always neat driving down the road and knowing that building you had a part of, and it's going to last a lot longer than you. The
Yeah.
worst part is though is when they start modernizing those buildings that you sold the new equipment in.
Then you start to feel your age a little bit, huh?
That's right. That's right. Then it's time for you to get out and let somebody else in the chair.
Gotcha. Well, Jay, this has been very fun. I appreciate your time. I appreciate all your wisdom, and thank you for coming on to share it with us.
No problem, Matthew. You have a great holiday.
Thank you. You
Merry
too.
Christmas.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Elevator Careers Podcast, sponsored by the Allred Group, a leader in elevator industry recruiting. You can check us out online at elevatorcareers.net. Please subscribe, and until next time, stay safe.